You say one wrong thing, or someone holds your gaze a moment too long, and your face goes warm and red. You did not choose it, you cannot reason your way out of it, and the more you wish it away, the more it seems to stay. That reaction has a name so ordinary that we forget how strange it is. It is called blushing. Researchers describe it as the involuntary reddening of the face that accompanies self-conscious emotions, the family of feelings that includes embarrassment, shyness, shame, and pride. It usually appears first in the cheeks, but it can spread to the ears, the neck, actually called the blush region. And the interesting question is not that it happens. It is that your body seems to have built a dedicated piece of machinery whose entire job is to broadcast your own private discomfort to everyone who can see you. Think about how odd that is. Almost everything else your body does under stress is designed to help you. Your heart speeds up to move blood. Your pupils widen to let in more light. But blushing does not help you run, or fight, or think more clearly. It just tells on you. To understand why, we have to look at what is actually happening under the skin. Start with the system that drives it. The blood vessels of your face are controlled by the sympathetic nervous system, the same branch of your nervous system that runs arousal and the fight or flight response. It works through chemical messengers that land on receptors called adrenoceptors. And here is where blushing stops making the obvious kind of sense. In most of your body, when the sympathetic system fires, it narrows your blood vessels and pushes blood away from the surface. That is part of why fear can leave you pale. But in the blush region, the opposite happens. The vessels open. Researchers who studied the blood vessels of the face found something specific about why. The veins in this region are supplied with beta adrenoceptors, in addition to the usual alpha adrenoceptors that most vessels carry. Those beta receptors can drive the facial vessels to widen rather than tighten. And when researchers chemically blocked the constricting alpha receptors with a drug called phentolamine, the amount of blushing did not change at all. That is a small finding with a large meaning. It tells us that blushing is not simply your vessels failing to stay tight under stress. It is an active instruction to open them, running on its own dedicated wiring, aimed at your face. Which raises the next question. Why the face? Why does this show up on your cheeks and not, say, on your forearm? Part of the answer is plumbing. Facial skin has more capillary loops packed into each patch of surface, and more vessels per unit of volume, than most other skin on your body. The blood vessels of the cheek are also wider, they sit nearer to the surface, and they are less hidden by the fluid in the surrounding tissue. So the same increase in blood flow that would pass invisibly through your arm turns your cheeks into a lit screen. Think of it as a difference in transparency rather than a difference in feeling. The blood may rise in other places too, but almost everywhere else it happens behind a thicker curtain of tissue, out of sight. On the cheeks the curtain is thin, the vessels are close, and there is very little to hide behind. The face is not blushing harder than the rest of you. It is simply the one place transparent enough to show it. Now here is a detail that quietly rearranges the whole experience. When researchers tracked blushing with thermal imaging, they found that the visible redness and the feeling of heat do not arrive at the same time. The visual display of a blush was relatively instant, while the temperature build-up on the skin came later, with a delay. Sit with what that means for the moment you are dreading. The color is already climbing your face while you are only beginning to feel warm. Other people can see your blush before you feel it. By the time you register the heat and think, "Oh no, I am blushing," the signal has already been sent and received. You are, in a small way, the last person in the room to get the news about your own face. And notice what that rules out. You cannot get ahead of it. There is no early warning you could catch in time, because the outward sign runs ahead of the inward feeling. This is part of what makes blushing feel so different from other things your body does. You can hold your breath. You can, with effort, steady a shaking hand. But you cannot decide not to blush, any more than you can decide not to digest. It belongs to the involuntary layer of you, the set of processes usually below the reach of your will. So what pulls the trigger? For a long time the assumption was that blushing comes from imagining what other people are thinking about you. In 2024, a group of researchers tested a version of that idea inside a brain scanner. They had adolescents watch video clips of themselves singing, and, as a comparison, clips of other people singing, while measuring the temperature of their cheeks. Blushing was higher when a person was watching themselves. And when the researchers looked at stronger activity in the cerebellum, and in a region called the paracentral lobule. The parts of the brain we normally use to reason about other people's minds did not show that link. In that study, watching yourself was enough. You did not have to imagine a single outside judgment for your face to give you away. This is the puzzle that fascinated Charles Darwin. In 1872, he called blushing the most peculiar and the most human of all expressions. He was struck by the fact that it seems to belong to our species alone, and that no effort of will can produce it or hold it back on command. And when you really look at it, the evolutionary shape of the thing seems almost backwards. Natural selection usually rewards animals that can hide their weakness and mask their inner state. Blushing does the reverse. It is a signal you cannot fake and cannot hide, and it announces the exact moment you feel most exposed. Why would a body ever be built to do that? One line of research offers an answer that turns the whole thing over. In 2009, the psychologists Corinne Dyke, Peter DeJong, and Madeline Peters showed people short stories in which someone committed a small transgression or suffered an embarrassing mishap. Then they showed pictures of that person either blushing or not, and asked for judgments. Across their experiments, the blushing person was, in most cases, evaluated more favorably than the one who stayed composed. The researchers concluded that blushing is a helpful bodily signal with face-saving properties. Read that again. The response you would give almost anything to suppress may be doing you a quiet favor. Here is one way to make sense of that. A signal is only trustworthy when it is hard to fake. Words are cheap. Anyone can say the right thing. But a blush cannot be summoned by someone who does not feel it, and it cannot be swallowed by someone who does. That may be exactly what gives it weight. When your face reddens after you have stepped over a social line, it may be telling the people around you something your words alone cannot prove. That you know the rule. That you care that you broke it. That you are not indifferent to them. The fact that you cannot control it is not a flaw in the system. It may be the whole reason the signal works. Look at it from the other side, as the person watching someone else go red. If a blush could be produced on command, it would tell you nothing, because anyone could summon one to seem sincere. It carries weight precisely because it leaks out against the will of the person showing it. In a strange way, the least controllable thing about you in that moment may also be the most honest thing about you. That may also be why it can feel like a trap. The blush is involuntary by design, and the research yourself is part of what feeds it. So the instant you notice it and want it gone, you have placed your attention exactly where the response lives. You are watching yourself, and watching yourself is close to the very thing that turns the color up. The wish to stop it can quietly become part of the loop that keeps it going. A brief and genuine note before we close. For most people, a blush is a passing weather system, arriving and clearing on its own. For some people, blushing is closely tied to real social anxiety, and researchers describe it as a core physiological symptom of that condition. If the distress around it is significant for you, or someone you know, that is a real and well-understood experience, and a qualified professional is the right person to talk to about it. This video is here to explain a mechanism, not to hand out medical advice. But for the everyday version, the one that catches you in a meeting or across a dinner table, there is something almost tender in what your body is doing. Under the embarrassment, a very old piece of wiring is firing a signal it cannot help sending. It opens the vessels in the one part of you thin enough to reveal them, and it tells the room, in a language older than speech, that you are present, that you are paying attention, and that you care what happens next. And it does all of this without asking you, and without ever explaining itself. The next time you feel your face go warm, you might notice, just for a second, that you are watching a genuinely human thing happen in real time, on your own skin. So here is the question I would love to see in the comments. Are you someone who blushes easily, or someone who almost never does, and has that ever changed? And if you want to follow the body all the way to its edge, the next episode asks a stranger question. What actually happens inside your body in the first hour after you die? I will see you there.